What happens when you take Puss in Boots, the AMC lady, and you put a wrestler in the middle of them? You get this. Babygirl is directed by Helena Regine. She did Bodies, 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 and this is a film of a tech CEO getting into some interesting activities with her intern. So what did I think about it? Well, let's talk about it and give it a score. Acting, of course, you have Nicole Kidman, you have Harris Dickinson, and you have Antonio Banderas, and yeah, those three work really well together. Of course, they are the kind of leads within this film. One isn't in there as much as the other two, but they all put on brilliant, perfect performances. Nicole Kidman plays her role with such complexity as her mind tries to figure out what she wants with the underlying problems that she has as a child peeking through every once in a while. Then you have Harris Dickinson, whose background in this film isn't explored as much, but he shows off the sternness and the domination aspect of this relationship super well, but with also a bit of humility thrown in there. And you talk about humility, then you talk about Antonio Banderas being kind of the person trying to figure everything out of what's going on, while trying to also be a loving husband. If I were to pick who had the best performance, it's definitely Antonio. He is brilliant in this film, especially the last act. It is just gold watching him work. Kidman's great and Dickinson's great too. I'm not going to lie, but something about his performance, especially during those last 30 minutes, and knowing that everything he kind of built upon was for those moments. He's kind of boring in the beginning, but that's fine. Just wait, you'll see why at the end, why he's like that. Everyone else in the film is kind of average, but I don't care because those three performances are not just a solo performance that I would dock points for. They're three really strong performances, so I'm going to give this category a full star out of 1 within this category. Visuals. Well, another film, another mixed bag when it comes to the visuals, because at times this film looks and feels so brilliant. The way the camera moves and sometimes the way the camera lingers is done so well until it doesn't. Many times where this film felt like it was taking way too long on some shots, but also sometimes it took too less of shots in there. But then there's also a part of the film about halfway through where the cinematography kind of changes, and I don't really like it. I understand the thought process behind it. I just find that they missed out on something because they did something super well, and that's the zoom in stuff. They didn't really do too much zoom in stuff at the second half of the film, and to me, it hurts it. I understand that it doesn't need to zoom in as much because you've already accepted yada yada blah blah blah, but then again, it worked so well, you could have just kept on doing it or dispersed it evenly throughout the film to make it feel balanced. There's also some shots that are just lit super bad, like it's super dark at times. Sometimes it's even too bright. There is also a time where, yeah, you could have probably had a seizure in it as well. So with all that being said, I'm just going to give it a half a star out of 1 within this category. I didn't absolutely hate it, but I didn't love it. Audio. So, of course, the use of their theme throughout the entire film works incredibly well. It's a sense of enticement and desire throughout any time it's played, and you know something's about to happen. This is a thing that a lot of films tremendously struggle on. They have a good theme and they don't use it properly through the whole entire film. I'm glad to report that this film at least knows when to and when to not use this theme that they use. And yeah, it's brilliantly composed. Also, a couple decent things. You can kind of hear everyone clearly. There are some times where it's a little spotty, but it kind of sounded just fine. And they didn't go too overly crazy on the sound effects. Of course, knowing what this film is about, it could have easily been a little more grotesque and gross. The way that they kind of handled certain scenes and probably, made it a little queasy for certain film goers. The music that is licensed from other musicians They linger way too long. They're just there, and they're like performances, and I kind of questioned why they were so long until I realized, oh, there's a lot of other deep-seated issues with this movie that's causing these scenes to be really long. So with all that being said, I'm just going to give it a half a star out of 1 within this category. There was issues with the music, but the score is brilliant, so it's like another mixed bag. Story. Well, another film this year falls victim to the same issue, as it seems like a lot of these films are doing the same thing. Now, I do love the themes. I love the ideals and the motivations. I love pretty much everything about this film besides the pacing and how it ends. Or when I say how it ends, I mean how it tries to end consistently. The pacing is off. This film doesn't feel like a normal story arc that you would typically get, which is fine. You can work with an unconventional story pattern. But what feels like just this mountain range of emotions gets tiring after the first few beats. Then it comes down to how the film is trying to end and wrap up, because the last 20-30 minutes, even though the performances, like I said, from Antonio Banderas are super well done, it feels like it doesn't know when to end. There were moments in this film where I pulled down the recliner, grabbed my drink, and was ready to go, and then the film kept going, and I was like, okay, recliner up, cup back in the cup holder, then it happened again, and then again. I don't know if I'm just gullible, or I was just downright confused of how they were going to end the film. Now, do I like the ending? Yes, I like the ending. It makes sense for the story, and everything is whatever. But the fact that it makes you go through that kind of jumping hoops thing, and the whole film feels like, I said, a mountain range of story arcs, it's just a pain to kind of watch. This film isn't even a long film. It's around like an hour and 40 minutes. So with all that being said, I'm going to give it 0 stars out of 1 within this category. Enjoyment. Story makes everything flow right. You can have brilliant acting, beautiful visuals, and good audio and music, but fail on your story, and this film does that. The pacing, like I said, is all over the place and messy. I didn't realize until I got in my car and was ready to type my review on Letterboxd to where I saw who made the film. This is the same person who did Bodies, 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 and I just notoriously didn't like that film. I thought it had unlikable characters, had pacing issues, and that never knew when it wanted to end. So when I saw it was her, I went, yes, no one's supposed to be likable in these situations, but you have to connect in some way, and it's hard to. There's this whole theme of automation and kind of just going at it and cruise control, but it totally fails at trying to represent the humanity and all the other stuff within certain characters and certain moments. It's even harder when I said, like, your pacing is completely off. This film feels like it's an hour longer than it actually is. It feels like a 2.5-hour movie because of how horribly paced, how the story arcs are just crazy nonsense. And it all made sense to me when I saw her name. No hate to Helena Regine, but her 2 films that I've seen, Bodies, 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 and Babygirl, have been complete letdowns. But the fact that both of her films struggle from the same problem, I don't know if I'm interested in watching another movie of hers. Now, I will. That's just the name of the game, right? I will give her a chance like I give M. Night Shyamalan a chance. I watch all of his movies as they release because at the end of the day, I want to watch a good movie. I don't go into a movie hoping to hate it and dislike it. I go into a movie hoping I love it and then I can tell everyone to go see it. I don't recommend this movie. I just don't. It's not very good. It's definitely a A24 50 Shades Grey type of deal. And if you're into that, you'll probably enjoy this film as well. So with the enjoyment category, I'm going to give it 0 stars out of 1 in this category. So if you're keeping track at home, that means Babygirl gets a 2 out of 5 stars. I think the film is bearable.